Welcome to Banned Book Reports, which is my personal revolution against English assignments that just take up your time. I want to preface this by saying it's still important to actually read books, but you don't have to write book reports on them. We'll get to that in a second. But the way that this series works is about every month or so, I'm going to start up a new book, and that book has either been banned for one reason or another in the past. And we'll also cover why that book was banned. Now, we've already covered Fahrenheit 451, and at the end of that video, I said that we were going to do Animal Farm by George Orwell. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into the book. So why was Animal Farm banned? Now, Google says that the book was misunderstood and was seen as being critical of all forms of socialism, rather than specifically Stalin's communism. It's been accused by detractors as communist propaganda and a seditious call to overthrow organized states. That kind of makes sense. Animal Farm is a story of violence, hardship, and political machinations, which tracks. The debate rocked back and forth over whether death at the hands of Farmer Jones for his and his family's profit was preferable to death under the rule of Napoleon, a pig on the farm who assassinated supposed political rivals. Let's break that down, but first, let's go ahead and give you a quick synopsis of the book. Basically, the book opens up to a whole bunch of animals that are on this farm run by Farmer Jones. But the animals have varying degrees of intellect. At the top are the pigs, at the bottom are the sheep. The sheep just pretty much only repeat what they say, and they only really say one thing throughout the book, which is 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, which is a battle cry that was started by the pigs, basically rallying the animals against the humans because humans walk on 2 legs. Most animals walk on 4. Now, at the beginning of the book, we meet Napoleon, which is the head pig, which is the smartest of them all, and also is the one that starts revolutionary ideals, sets the rules, and ultimately leads the revolt against Farmer Jones, which results in Farmer Jones's death. Now, after Farmer Jones is dead, Napoleon and the other pigs rise to the top because they're the more intelligent ones, and they're able to kind of set laws and precedents and maintain the farm, as it were, without Jones's presence. Now, what this results in is they start off with like this more community-based, like democratic system where everyone kind of gets input on some of the rules, and ultimately the pigs use a us versus them mentality of how do we show that animals are better than humans. After a bit of politicking, eventually the animals all settle in their own different roles on the farm, and they all have their own jobs, and they have different rations, different treats, different things that incentivize different animals for doing a better job. Now, the pigs being at the top further incentivize knowledge work, which is what they are used for. They don't have an actual job on the farm, if memory serves. Now, as we progress through the book, you start to see some things start to change. Basically, once the pigs rise to power, you see the dogs get recruited as security for the pigs, so that way they can basically remove any sort of rivals, and you start to notice the rules start changing. At the beginning of the book, the pigs and all the farm animals set out these sets of rules for the animals to follow, so that way they don't become human. Over time, you start to see like the pigs start to drink alcohol, sleep in the farmhouse, and kind of abuse the power because they change the wording so that way it's not that big of a deal. Also, the pigs start to utilize scare tactics and an us versus them mentality. So one thing that the animals are working towards is building this windmill to make all their lives easier. And they have this idea of if they can build this thing, they will have an easier, gentle life, which far surpasses the comforts that they knew under Farmer Jones's rule. And if they can build this windmill, they all get to live happily ever after, essentially. But this is kind of like a false idea that's put in their minds by the pigs, because the pigs use that as a way that they can manipulate the masses. In order to maintain their rule, they just say, hey, even though we're going through hard times, under Farmer Jones's rule, we weren't working on this windmill. Therefore, once we get this windmill done, everything will be fine, and it will be so much better than Farmer Jones. We just need to keep working towards this thing, and it will be fine. So all the animals keep going, okay, this is fine. We'll just work through this. All while Napoleon and all the other pigs' power starts to keep getting stronger. Now, later in the book, the windmill breaks, and they blame, I believe it's neighboring farms for this. They don't ever attack any other farms, but it further incentivizes this us versus them mentality. Now, anytime anyone kind of challenges the rule of the pig, they're either shut down by scare tactics or they go missing. Boxer being an example of that, where he outlives his usefulness, so they say that he's going off to a hospital, but they're sending him off to a slaughterhouse. That's a little bit more dark than I remember, actually. And ultimately it leads to the point where all the pigs start breaking all the rules that they set out for their own comfort, to the point where they are standing on their hind legs, and they are basically assuming the role of humans, and they are more oppressive than Farmer Jones was. and the conditions are worse. Now, collectively throughout this book, what the vibe I got from it that I was trying to say was basically that if you're going to try and challenge an oppressive system, make sure if you're going to separate power among the people, it needs to still be systematic to the point where it's not as easily abusable. Also, I can see why this would be a little bit more challenged just because it's very keen on the point of having politicians that say one thing and then do the opposite. Yeah, so I don't know how I feel about this book being viewed as communist propaganda and being banned for it. For instance, like if you view Farmer Jones as like the upper class profiting off of the backs of the animals. Hearing that out loud, I can see why this might be banned more in America just because there's some capitalist undertone, but I feel like it's kind of a way of showing how communism doesn't work, but also kind of portraying it as a way that communism could work. And we're going to leave it at that just because I don't have the social government knowledge to have that kind of argument, nor do I want to do that on my YouTube channel. But collectively, this was actually a really good book, and it was also a really easy read. It was very satisfying to kind of see it kind of progress as like you see the pigs become more corrupt, and at the end like you kind of get a little bit of a dopamine hit, but also at the same time it's very much here's what happened, you kind of saw this coming, and now the animals can't do anything about it, and now they're stuck in a more oppressive form of government. Now, the next book that we're going to read is Lord of the Flies, which I'm excited to start because that's been on my read list for a bit. And also, if you're new to the series, there is a 200-word book report down in the description below. There's also instructions on how to use that if you do have to use it as a book report, but the general gist is you just fill it out Mad Lib style. You just replace the adjectives. I'm also thinking about starting up another book series just because a lot of these books aren't banned. I do still like to stick with like the banned books for right now, so if you have any banned books or book recommendations, make sure to drop those in the comments below. But thank you all so much for watching, and we'll learn something new in the next video.